The primary purpose of the blending valve is to A. Remove chlorine from the incoming water. B. Mix hot and cold tap water to achieve the proper feed water temperature. C. Increase oral rejection. Or D. Remove bacteria. Again, the question is, the primary purpose of the blending valve is to A. Remove chlorine from incoming water. B. Mix hot and cold tap water to achieve the proper feed water temperature. C. Increase oral rejection. Or D. Remove bacteria. So the answer for this one is going to be B. Mix hot and cold tap water to achieve the proper water feed temperature. So if you ever opened, or if you've opened already, and you notice on the log, the water treatment log that you have to fill in every morning, one of the questions or one of the spaces that you fill out is temperature. What's the temperature of the water? So this blending valve helps maintain that temperature needed for that. A question that this question will pop up, may pop up. I want to say may because you don't know what questions are going to be on the BONENT or CCHT exam, but this question may pop up along with another question that may pop up. Sometimes it asks you which one of these components are not in the water room, and it's typically a question that has what's that called? Hot water heater. So it has the hot water heater on there. So if you notice, the hot water heater is not inside the water room. Now it might be on the side or like a partition of the water room, but for most clinics, the hot water heater is not inside the water room, like next to the other components. Okay, question number 2, the booster pump. The booster pump is responsible for, is it A, removing calcium, B, maintaining water pressure for optimal circuit and oral performance, C, removing chlorine, or D, regenerating the water softener? The answer for this one is B, maintaining water pressure for optimal circuit and oral performance. That pressure that's coming from the city water isn't enough alone to pass it through the whole entire water system and for it to get to the oral to be disinfected and clean. So that booster pump is needed, again, to maintain water pressure for optimal circuit and oral performance. The booster pump and the blending valve are typically close to each other, okay? And then that temperature gauge that you'll see is usually before or sometimes even after the booster pump, so you can see what's the temperature of your water along with the first gauge number that you have to write down, okay, on your water treatment log. Remember that. Question number 3. What component removes large suspended particles before they reach downstream equipment? So what component removes large suspended particles before they reach downstream equipment? As far as looks, just think of a tank, okay? This is typically a tank that looks similar to your chlorine tank and that looks similar to your water softener tank, okay? So is it A, RO pre-filter, B, water softener, C, that or multimedia filter, it could be either or name, or D, endotoxin filter. All right, so this component removes large suspended particles before they reach downstream equipment. All right, so the answer for this one is going to be C. As far as order, your multimedia filter is going to be before your water softener, and your water softener is going to be before your chlorine tanks, and then you have your pre-oral filter that you'll have there, okay, as an order. So again, any chance that you get, go to your water treatment room and look at these things as they in order. All right, but again, that multimedia filter, that's what removes large particles. So for and if there were any rocks or any pieces of plastic that comes down through the pipes of the city line, that makes sure it's removed from that before moving on to the next thing. Okay. Next question. The primary purpose of the water softener is to remove, is it A, chlorine, B, calcium and magnesium, C, endotoxins, or D, sodium? So the primary purpose of the water softener is to remove, the answer for this one is B. The primary purpose is to remove calcium and magnesium from the city water that's coming in. The reason why you want to remove calcium and magnesium is because it's hard water. Why is removing calcium and magnesium important? There we go. We just talked about it. Is it A, to improve conductivity, B, to prevent damage to the RO membrane and downstream piping, C, to increase water pressure, or D, to remove bacteria? So why is removing calcium and magnesium important? The answer for this one is B, to prevent damage to the RO membrane and downstream piping. Okay, it is easier for the RO membrane and less stress on it to remove salt than calcium and magnesium. Okay, so the water coming in is hard, so it goes through the water softener, okay, to become soft, then that salt is removed from or removed by the RO system. If we were to go through these other responses, anytime you see something that says remove bacteria, just think of your RO. All right. Anytime you see something that says increase water pressure, we just talked about this one. What component is to increase water pressure? The booster pump. The brine tank contains what inside? And I gave you the answer earlier. Activated carbon, purified water, salt used to regenerate the water softener, or endotoxin filters. So what's in the brine tank? When you think about the brine tank, if you're someone who likes to cook, just think of brining a chicken, okay? So when you're putting that chicken into brine, it's usually a salty water, right? It's usually water or broth that has sodium in it, that has salt in there. So the brine tank, it's usually that big black thing that we put our salt pellets in there, okay? So we want to make sure that is, and it depends on your company's policy and procedure, at least halfway full or 3/4 full, whatever your company's policy and procedure wants it to be. You have to make sure you have salt in there so the water softener can work efficiently. At the end of the day, when you're closing, what's one of your jobs? To check the water softener, right? You have to do the water softener test to make sure that's working correctly. Because if the water softener is working correctly, we know, okay, it's protecting and helping out the RO so the RO can continue and effectively work correctly as well. All right, number 7, the primary carbon tank removes most of the A, endotoxins, B, calcium, C, chlorine and chloramines, or D, bacteria. So which one of these is the response? Primary carbon tank. So we have 2 carbon tanks. We have a primary and we have a secondary, but they both remove the same thing. The answer for this one is going to be C, chlorine. So when we do our chlorine test, where do we check the chlorine? We check it at the sample port that comes before or after the primary carbon tank. So if you have your carbon tank right here in the middle, and when you're doing your water checks, there's a sample port right here and there's a sample port right here. Okay, always check with the sample port that comes after the primary carbon tank, and it usually sits in between the primary carbon tank, and it sits in between the primary carbon tank and the secondary carbon tank, in between that. If you take a sample at the sample port before the primary carbon tank, that water is going to be salty because it's coming from the water softener, but as well as you're going to get a false reading, okay, because that water hasn't not yet passed inside the primary carbon tank. So again, when we do our water checks every how many hours, I'm gonna let you guys put the answer for that one in the comments, okay, or in the review section. So after how many hours do we have to do a water check? Okay, and then we do that water check using either the RPC strips, or sometimes your company might have some high sense strips. Okay, it's either a minute that you're swishing it or 30 seconds, depends on what the strip manufacturer requires. The secondary carbon tank primarily serves as A, the main chlorine removal device, B, a backup if the primary carbon tank becomes exhaust, C, a water storage tank, or D, a bacterial filter? We know it's not D, okay? Because again, anything dealing with bacteria, that's your RO. We know it's not storing, because that's a water storage tank. It's your secondary carbon tank. A carbon tank isn't a water storage tank. So we know it's not C, all right? We know it's not A because the question clearly asks the secondary carbon tank, okay? Your secondary isn't your main. Your main is your primary. So your secondary is your backup, okay? It comes in second place. It's your backup to your primary. So the answer is going to be B, a backup if the primary carbon tank becomes exhausted. So if your primary carbon tank fails, we know you have your secondary carbon tank that's going to be filtering out the chlorine. So instead of now, if the primary carbon tank fails, instead of checking your chlorine every 4 hours, now you got to go back there every 30 minutes to check the chlorine, okay, until a new carbon tank is installed. Next question. Number 9. Total chlorine testing should be performed A, after the RO, B, before the booster pump, C, between the primary and secondary carbon tank, or D, at the dialysis machine. So your water checks. Total chlorine testing should be performed. Total chlorine testing is your water checks. When you hear that alarm go off every 3.5 to 4 hours, we have to go to the back and check the water system. That's what we're checking for. We're checking for the chlorine. We're doing a chlorine check. We're doing a water check. Okay. I kind of went over this already 2 questions ago, so you guys should know this already. So the answer for this one is C, between the primary and secondary carbon tank. Okay, you have your sample port that's going to be sitting between the primary and secondary carbon tank. It can't be the secondary. It can't be it cannot be the sample port after the RO. It cannot be the sample port before the booster pump, because before the booster pump, it's straight, basically city water. The only difference is it's been mixed with hot water. So you got your cold water mixed with your warm water. Okay, your blending valve. All right. So it can't be one of those. It has to be C. All right. Number 10. The RO pre-filter removes what? Calcium, carbon fines and debris, endotoxin, or sodium. So which one is it? The RO pre-filter removes calcium, carbon fine and debris, endotoxins, or sodium. Answer for this one is going to be B, carbon fines and debris. Okay, so your RO pre-filter sits before the RO. All right, that's why it's a pre-filter. So it's usually like a blue small little filter, or sometimes like a long filter. Sometimes it's white. Depends on, again, every clinic's different, and it sits right before the water gets to the RO. Number 11, reverse osmosis removes contaminants by A, heating the water, B, using ultraviolet light, C, forcing pressured water across a semi-permeable membrane, or D, passing water through salt. Okay, so with this one, reverse osmosis, so it's basically asking you how does the RO, which is your reverse osmosis, you have your traditional RO or you have your CWP, how does it remove the contaminants? The answer for this one is C. It forces pressurized water across a semi-permeable membrane. Okay, so basically it's pressing that water through that membrane to remove those extra contaminants that's in the water. The minimum acceptable RO rejection percentage is what? 80%, 85%, 90%, or D, 95%. The answer for this one is actually, and before I answer it, well, the answer for this one is C. And you're gonna notice, again, if you've opened already, when you're filling out your water treatment log, what's one of the things they ask you? Hey, what's your RO rejection rate? And you have to write that number down. If it's anything below 90, what do we usually have to do? Call the biomed. Okay, the RO has to remove at least 90%, minimum 90% of those endotoxins, of those bacteria that's coming from the city water. The distribution loop continuously circulates purified water primarily to A, increase water pressure, B, prevent bacterial biofilm formation, C, remove chlorine, or D, increase conductivity. So which one of these is the response? The distribution loop continuously circulates purified water primarily to B, prevent bacterial biofilm formation. Sitting water isn't good. Water constantly moving is good. Okay, we all know that. When water sits, it just, bacteria builds up, there's no movement, it starts to stink. Moving water is always good. Endotoxin filters are installed to remove A, calcium, B, chlorine, C, remaining viral, bacterial, and endotoxin paragenic impurities, or D, magnesium. All right, so let's go down these responses. We know it's not A and D. A and D happens where? In the water softener. All right, so A and D happens in the water softener through ion exchange. All right, B is not B because chlorine is removed in what tanks? The two chlorine tanks, your primary and your secondary carbon tanks. So your answer is going to be C. Okay, again, when you're taking the test, sometimes using process of elimination is really helpful. Okay, because some of the responses they give you, you can already knock down at least two of them. Okay, and if you can knock down two of them, you have a 50-50 chance of getting it correct. Before routine testing is performed, the RO should run for at least how many minutes? A, 5 minutes, B, 10 minutes, C, 15 minutes, or D, 30 minutes. This one here, again, if you've opened on your water treatment log, it asks you, hey, has the RO been running for a blank amount of minutes? The answer for this one is C, 15 minutes. Okay, the RO has to be running for at least 15 minutes. That way, the water that was sitting in there can be able to pass through the carbon filter tanks, pass through all the tanks before you do your first chlorine check of the day. The acceptable hardness after the water softener is less than 5 grains per gallon, less than 2 grains per gallon, less than or equal to 1 grain per gallon, or D, 0 grains only. The answer for this one is going to be C. Your closers, if you close and you haven't opened, you're typically doing the water softener check at the end of the day, right? So when we do that, depending on what strips you use, if it's 10 seconds, swish, make sure it's not purple, okay? And then you have your less than or equal to 1 grain per gallon. The acceptable total chlorine level after the primary carbon tank is A, less than or equal to 1 ppm, B, less than or equal to 0.5 ppm, C, less than or equal to 0.1 ppm, or D, 0 ppm only. Okay, so which one of these is the response, the acceptable taurine chlorine level after the primary carbon tank? All right, so the answer for this one is going to be C, less than 0.1 ppm. All right, so make sure when we're doing these, especially when state is in town, when you're going back there to do the chlorine check, make sure you have a clock back there, okay? Because if the bottle or the whatever sensors or strips that you're using, if it says for a minute to switch back and forth, or if it says for 30 seconds to switch back and forth, you do not want it to be counting without something that's giving you the accurate time. And there is usually and always a clock in the water room, so you use that clock, okay, to make sure your time is accurate. I've seen a lot of people get let go because they didn't do that, which is sad. Carbon tank chlorine testing should be performed A, weekly, B, daily only, C, prior to the first patient treatment and every 4 hours thereafter, or D, every patient treatment. So carbon tank testing should be performed. So this is your water check. You should be doing water checks every what? C, prior to the first patient treatment and every 4 hours after that. All right, so before your first patient get on, you should be doing your water checks. So that's your opener that does it, and then every 4 hours thereafter. Now, again, if you work for let's say DaVita or Fresenius, I think ARA, these different companies, they won't have 4 hours on there. They want you to do it every 3.5 hours, but that's still before that 4 hour mark. Okay, so you want to keep that in mind. If you go take your test and you see 4 hours as one of the response, but you don't see 3.5, it's because the answer is 4 hours. It's just that company's policy wants you to do it 3.5 hours. That way, there's no chance in you passing that 4 hour mark, if you were to wait to do it to 4 hours. Because hey, stuff happens. Like say 4 hours happens, the 4 hour clock hits, but then you got a patient, bleeding and you're short staffed. So that 3 hours and 30 minutes gives you a little cushion to make sure everything is checked correctly. All right, number 19, product water microbial testing should demonstrate endotoxin levels of how much? Less than 2, less than 1, less than 0.25, or less than 0.12. So which one of these are the answers? Okay, so product water microbial testing should demonstrate endotoxins levels of, the answer for this one is D, less than 0.12 EU ml. All right, last one. According to the monitoring chart, annual AMI inorganic chemical contaminant analysis should also be performed whenever A, a new water system is installed, B, oral membranes are replaced, C, oral rejection falls below 90, D, seasonal changes occur, or E, all of the above. Okay, anytime when you're taking your test and they show you, like, because you've seen all of these responses only had A through D, but this one particular has E as an option. Okay, sometimes it's gonna be E, all of the above, but you got to pay a little bit more attention to it, if they have an all of the above response. Okay, because if you have if you're reading down the selections and A seems right and also B seems right, it's gonna be all of the above. Okay, because anytime you install a new water system, you need to do that check, and then anytime an oral membrane is replaced, you need to do that check. Right, so the answer for this one is going to be E, all of the above. So hopefully these questions help you. Again, you know what I always tell you, take the time, walk through your water room, okay, look at your components, look at the order that the components are in, and look at the functions that's labeled on the components, okay, on your tanks, on your multimedia filter. See what type of RO system you have. If you have a traditional RO system, if you have a CWP, central water processing unit for RO system, or you might be somewhere that's using DI tanks because they're in a process of getting an RO system or whatever's going on. But just take your time, go back in the water room and just look.